Thank you for listening to the Mujeres Create podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Mujeres Create podcast. So, we are at the finish line of the Behind the Success series. This is part 8. Who's excited? So, initially, I wanted to do 10 episodes, but then I realized that some of the parts were very similar to one another. So I combined a few episodes. So this is part 8. And this episode combines two ideas into one. The first one is deconstructing your corporate identity, which is something I'm still doing. And the second part is how we can create our own version of success. The last episode, I talked about my last corporate role and all the things that I had to, I guess, combat as I left my, that corporate identity behind, that ideal role that I thought I was going to be in for a long time. This little pull in my heart calling me towards different things had been happening for a long time. I would say for at least the last 8 years of my career. And, it started with a silent whisper. And I can't remember. I think it was right before I went to Google. I had been in a very happy role at Hulu. And then I get recruited by Google. And I thought, oh my God, this is happening. I guess I'm going to have to be in it for longer because Google is not a place that you just, leave right away. So I guess I have to commit myself to doing this a little bit longer. The fact that I had those thoughts was a sign right then and there that I was feeling like it was time to change careers or for some sort of change. But anyways, I took that job and I stayed in it for 3 years. Then I took the next job and I stayed in it for almost 4 years. And so finally, 2 years ago, I said, I don't feel motivated to go to any other company right now. Maybe it's time for me to try something different. Maybe it's time for me to really believe in myself and understand that, there are other things that I can do. This episode is less about following these 10 steps and more about knowing that you can create your own path, your own steps, and you can go at your own pace. So take that with you, and I'm hoping that you just find your way, whatever you're trying to do. And just a reminder that I'm here to support you. You can always DM me, email me, call me. This feeling of it's time for something new. I feel like I want to go in a different direction, have been building for a lot of years. And I was kind of trying to silence that voice because I kept finding success, right? I went to Google, I went to iHeartMedia, I had the titles, I had what I thought were ideal roles. And so it was really hard for me to say, I'm going to leave this ideal company. I'm going to leave this ideal role. I'm going to leave this amazing pay, the perks, the benefits. Like it was really hard for me to work through that. It just got to a point where I decided, okay, this is just getting louder and louder, and I'm not doing anything about it. I need to do something about it. And even though I don't know what lies ahead, I need to take a chance, or at the very least, take a break. And so when I left iHeartMedia, it started out as like taking a break. And just, I think I took like 6 months of a break where I was not working anywhere, where I was just, resting and trying to enjoy life. But in the back of my mind, I felt that pressure of, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, no job, no income. This feels very foreign because I had basically worked from the time I graduated to 2023. And so it was just it was just a new feeling to know that you don't have any income coming in, but you have a lot of expenses. And so getting used to that was really challenging. So that 6 months break ended when I decided to start doing consulting work. And in that break, I started to I opened my LLC. I started to think about what could my offering be if I were to just do things independently. And the low-hanging fruit for me was multicultural marketing, multicultural media sales. That's what I had been doing. There's a lot of smaller media companies that need fractional roles. And why not try it? try it? Why not do that independently without having to be there full time, without having to fully commit to a full time anything right away? And I did that. I was consulting for a whole year. And in that time, I got to work with several smaller media companies that were mostly family owned, Latino owned. And I was helping them strategize their sales efforts, lock in some business, just help them create those connections that sometimes for small media companies is really hard to do. And, I have to say that it was a lot more relaxed than obviously working in corporate. I was happier because I was working with people that I really liked and admire and got along with. I was working with my colleagues from the industry that I've known for a long time. In many cases, I felt like I was just working with family, and that felt great. But again, I felt like, okay, so I left corporate because I wanted to pivot, but here I am. I pivoted slightly. I just like turned my neck, basically. That was the equivalent of the pivot that I called a pivot, right? Am I really pivoting, or am I just like thinking that I'm pivoting, but I'm still doing the same thing? I'm still in the same industry, doing the same type of work, and I'm not putting effort into the other things that I said I wanted to do. And I started to feel that again. It's like, Yesenia, here you are again. And I have been in this time leaning into therapy, leaning into spiritual coaching and guidance. And through that, I finally decided that after a year of consulting, that I was just going to really take a break and not think about work, not worry about work, not think about where am I going to make money? How am I going to use my creativity? It was really just a time for me to settle into myself. I've spoken about my hysterectomy and the impact of that had on me spiritually, physically, emotionally. And, when it happened, April of last year, I just went back to work. I went back to the consulting work like the same week. And I can't believe I did that to myself. I just went back to work. I was taking calls from bed, and I'm just like, why did I do that for? Why didn't I just take a proper break? And so this past March is really when I decided, okay, it's really time for me to just figure out what I want to do creatively, as a business, as a way for me to provide for myself, as something that really gives me purpose and meaning, and something that I really enjoy. And so in March, I decided to just leave everything, all the work, all the independent work that I was doing. A few months later, in July, I launched the Mujeres Create podcast, which is one of my creative ventures that I've been dedicating a lot of time to. And I'm just about to launch my website where I'm offering leadership coaching, team wellness experiences, wellness events, individual coaching for all levels, whether you're early in your career, mid-level, or senior level. And I'm doing it all through the lens of wellness and holistic practices. And so that's what I feel called to do right now, along with the Mujeres Create podcast and other creative projects that I'm also developing on my own. And so I'm finally there in terms of doing something different. Is this everything that I'm going to do? Probably not. I'm still finding my way. And before we get into the ways that you can carve your own path, I think first understanding that your corporate identity is something that is very real. From the moment that you are a child, people are asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? And then you grow up and you don't know what you want to be, but people are still asking you that question. What school are you going? What school are you going to? What major are you going to choose? Where do you want to work? What companies do you work for? What do you do for a living? These questions never end. So, that identity starts to kind of like sink into you. And it's hard for you to separate from that. You feel like you have to have an answer. When you're a child, you have to say something. Otherwise, your parents worry, right? when you are a young adult in high school, you better respond to your parents that you're going to X and Y, Z school, or that you think you want to be whatever, a doctor, a lawyer, a veterinarian, a nurse, an astronaut, whatever it is. Like, people are always looking for those answers. So we get into that mindset that part of our identity is what we do, where we work. And so imagine having that very ingrained in me and ingrained in us, deciding to leave that after 22 years. But not only that, deciding to leave very sought after places like Google, like iHeartMedia, career marketing and media and sales. It's something that not many people understand. And, for those of us navigating those feelings, it's very hard to make that decision, to separate from that identity. And so when you separate from it, you do struggle with, okay, am I still someone important if I don't have a company name behind me, if I'm not making any money, if I don't have a fancy title, if I don't have health benefits, if I don't even have perks, if I walk into a room and I can't answer the question, what do you do for a living or where do you work? It's very hard. I was in Panama. I went there for an event my friend invited me to, and I wasn't dreading the question because now I've done the work, but many, many times I was asked, where do you work? What do you do? And for the first time, I was very happy to say, I'm not working right now. I don't do anything. Even though I do things. Um, I'm working on my website. I'm doing the Mujeres Create podcast and several things. But I was just like smiling and telling people, this is my sabbatical year. This is a year where I'm choosing to do the things that I've been wanting to do, invest in myself, pour into myself. And some people were just like, okay, cool. Others were like, oh my God, you're my hero. Oh my God, I've always wanted to do that. But I felt comfortable, finally felt comfortable doing that. But anyways, going back to identity, it's really something that we have to deconstruct, because sometimes we create that identity based off of stories that we've been told, mindsets that we have developed. Our own sense of self is tied to, how do I earn money? What do I do for a living? What school did I go to? All of these things, that external factors that we make part of our identity. And so for me, initially, understanding that I was going to walk into rooms, talk to people, explain to my family, to my friends, that I was kind of pausing and stepping away from my career. And like, what does that mean? Even some friends, they know me as the person that was always traveling for work and working hard and being at every conference and going to every event. And, I have a lot of connections in the industry, the person that knew everybody. And now I'm just like the quiet one in the room, the one that's just observing, the one that's just like genuinely enjoying their time and genuinely just trying to be present. So it's a big shift. And stepping away from that identity is work that you really do have to do and invest in. And a lot of the self-work that I've done, I've understood that a lot of that identity that was tied to my corporate persona have nothing to do with the real me. These are just parts of me. They're not my whole identity. All the ways that we identify ourselves are just really parts of you. I am a woman. I'm a Latina woman. I am a 44-year-old woman. I am a corporate executive no longer. I am an entrepreneur. I am a podcaster. I am a Dominicana. All these things, they're labels. And yes, some of them are really fun identities that we adopt. But we really need to stop ourselves and say, okay, where is my identity real versus something that I have adopted because I thought I needed to? And I think a big part of deconstructing our identity is that, like, dissecting everything, all those parts of your identities that you kind of now don't identify with as much. A big part of pivoting is letting go of that identity that no longer aligns with who you really are, or who you think you want to be, or who you've become. And it's okay. Like, not being part of a big corporation does not take away from the person that I am, does not take away the experiences that I've had, the skills that I've gained, the knowledge that I've gained in all these years of working in multicultural media. The fact that I don't do it anymore does not take away any of those experiences. Now I get to have new experiences. And by the way, a lot of my corporate experiences have really helped me in this new phase of my life. I'm understanding that if you are going to reinvent yourself, what does that mean? Like, what are you trying to reinvent from? And I think starting with dissecting your identity is very crucial. The second part of this episode is talking about the art of reinvention. So reinvention and pivoting, is something that a lot of people talk about these days, because I do feel that after the pandemic, people are looking for more. Some people are looking for more purpose. Other people feel like they will just want to be more intentional about their decisions, about where they're going, about where they work, about why they get up in the morning every day to go do this work. They want to feel like there's purpose, there's meaning, there's intention behind all of that. Or, some people just don't want to be so stressed out all the time. A lot of people lost loved ones during the pandemic, unfortunately. Some people lost their jobs, jobs that they have been in for many years, for many decades, and at the drop of a dime, they lose their jobs. And, some people are just trying to find ways they can serve others, ways where they can have some type of impact in the world. And I definitely identify with that, right? I want to be able to help others, to serve others, to have some sort of impact. And I'm still trying to find out what that is. But I think with reinvention, it's a lot about that. Like, what is the next phase of me? What does that look like? How can I reinvent myself? Some people see it as, I am going to change my looks dramatically. So I change my looks. I brighten my hair, even though it's supposed to be like very subtle highlights. The hairstylist just like went rogue and gave me full blonde, but I'm embracing it. But anyways, reinvention can be changing your look. Maybe you've had the same color hair, maybe the same length of hair, maybe you've dressed a certain way. For me, when I worked in corporate, I ditched the suits. Like after I left NBC, I basically did away with all the suits, and I was just embracing more of the fun dresses, more of the fun clothing, the colorful clothing. And then I went to Google and I tried to keep that up too, because I don't like suits. And so sometimes like reinvention is just like, it has to do with your appearance, with how you show up, with kind of like giving your personality a little boost, be more courageous, being bolder, being more outgoing, just expressing yourself more. Sometimes the reinvention is a little bit deeper. Maybe it's changing industries, changing jobs, quitting your career. Although quitting sounds very dramatic, it's more like sunsetting your career and doing other things. For some people, reinvention is launching a new business, launching a new venture, launching a podcast. And so reinvention can mean a lot of things. Understanding what does that mean for you? What is the change that you're trying to get? Because it's not always the big move, like quitting your career, quitting your job. Sometimes it's just like, okay, I need a new job. I'm going to go look for a new job because I don't feel good doing this here. I want to go do similar work somewhere else where I can be a little bit more supported, where I can be a little bit more bold. And because of that, I'm going to change my looks. I'm going to update my hair, update my wardrobe, act different, create a different network. Or it can be like a dramatic big shift. And then you're kind of like, okay, what do I do with this big reinvention, leaving corporate, leaving my career. And so it means reinvention means a lot of different things to many people. So identifying what that means for you is important. So here's how I'm doing it. And one thing that I've told myself for the last 2 years is that I need to go on my own pace. I can't fall into the trap of rushing this process of thinking that I need to figure things out right away, because I'm just going to fall into the trap again. And that's what I wanted to avoid. So I've been going on my own pace and uncovering things little by little until you get there. That's where I am right now, right? Which is taking time to figure out where you want to go and how you want to do it, right? And giving yourself a lot of grace in the process. I would say that the very first step for me was feeling that discomfort in the job that I was doing. You kind of have to feel it. And, sometimes discomfort, pain in the workplace is temporary, right? Not every year is the same. Not every year is a fun year. Not every year is a difficult year. Not every year is a balanced year. We kind of go through the emotions depending on our personal lives, what's going on in our personal lives. Are we stressed? Are we sad? Are we dealing with a lot of difficulty from a personal perspective? And how is that showing up to work in the workplace? Sometimes the work itself is very stressful and it affects our personal lives. Sometimes we have a very good year, financial abundance. We have fun in the workplace. We learn a ton. We get promoted. We have everything that we were looking for. We get all of our wishes met. And sometimes we get none of our wishes met. So not every year is the same, right? So understanding that, okay, are you trying to pivot? Are you trying to reinvent yourself because you just had a bad year? Or because you really feel that this has been happening for many years and it's really time for you to do that? Understanding where you sit. For me, it was understanding that this had been going on for almost 10 years and I had kept ignoring it. And no matter where I went, I was still feeling the same. And it was time. So I encourage you to kind of think about where you are in that journey. How do you feel waking up every day, going to do the work that you're doing? If you felt that even if you went to another company, even if you made more money, even if you got the desired title, you would still feel this way. Maybe it is something that you need to pay attention to. Maybe you're just going through the emotions. Maybe you just need to kind of like take a little break, maybe go on vacation, take a sabbatical, a few months sabbatical. What do you need to support yourself during this moment of confusion and where you're trying to figure things out? And so that is the first step, like understanding where you are in that journey. The second step is after you realize that, okay, do I really need to quit this job, this career, and do something else? Or do I just need another job? If the answer is, I want to quit my career, or I want to take a break and just not work for 6 months or for a year, I would take a look at my finances and say, what are my responsibilities? What bills do I need to eliminate? If it's like paying off a credit card or, maybe cutting the Netflix account or the Amazon account or the Spotify account. I have all of those things. That's why I'm saying, what are the expenses that are just, I don't really need? How can I eliminate that? Where am I wasting money? Am I doing my nails every week? Am I doing my hair every week? Am I doing my eyebrows every week? All these expenses that really do add up. And these are not judgments. These are just like have real conversations with you and like looking at your statement and then looking at your savings, looking at your financial security. If you haven't been investing in, that rainy day that may come as a result of you quitting or of you leaving, do I need to give myself another year to save money for this rainy day? Do I need to take a hard look at my finances and say, I'm not ready to quit this job? If I quit this job, am I going to lose my home? Am I going to lose my car? Like, what is at risk for me? And really going through that exercise, because it is important. It is important. And, I recognize that For me, I don't have the pressure of raising children. I don't have any children. I do have responsibilities, and I obviously would love to be able to maintain the lifestyle that I had. So for me, it was a little bit easier. I had been saving for a long time. I was financially sound when I made these decisions. So I knew that I was not going to risk any of the things that were important or critical in my life. And so going through that, exercise is very important before you make a big decision like that. And, I think one thing that not many people talk about is understanding that you probably have more than you think. Even when you don't have savings, you do probably have a 401k account. Hopefully you do. Or maybe you have some assets, maybe a house, a car, some assets that you may have access to. Maybe you can move in with your parents for a little bit while you get yourself back on your feet. Like, we tend to think that 401ks are just for when we retire. And obviously there's a lot of risk in tapping into your 401k. Like, you have to go through the painful process of paying those taxes and, paying a penalty. And obviously nobody wants to do that. So I say this to you just to remind you that sometimes we have more than we think we do. We just have to really go through that exercise and saying, okay, I don't have a lot of savings, but I have this, I have that, I have this. If I'm really miserable where I am, I can afford to take 6 months and I will make it up at some point, because you can make it up. You can make that money again, and probably more, probably 10x. So financially combating those feelings of scarcity, and as a Latina immigrant, I'm an immigrant, oldest daughter, I combated a lot of those thoughts of lack. And even when I knew I had my savings and I had a plan, I was still struggling for a long time, just thinking about, what if this doesn't go well? What would happen to me, right? Empowering yourself by understanding your financial status always really helps. So that for me was step 2. Step 3 is a little bit more about the things that you need support in. So for me, I desperately needed therapy after my hysterectomy. And, I had been thinking about therapy for a lot longer than just last year. Something that had been building for me. And, I got married. We're trying to have a baby. I had a hysterectomy. I was trying to leave my corporate career. All these big moments. And I'm like, I need therapy to help me understand all of this. How do I unpack all of these big moments? The pandemic, there's just so many things. Like, I think in your 40s too, as a woman, going through perimenopause, and there's just so many things that are happening. I desperately needed therapy. Empowering yourself by supporting yourself through understanding, okay, do I need therapy? Do I need spiritual guidance? Do I just need to slow down and rest? What are all the ways that I can support myself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? And so you kind of have to, just like you did your finances, take stock of your finances, take stock of your mental health, of your wellness, of your body. I talked a lot about burnout and the effects of that. Now you're leaving corporate, or now you're leaving that job. How are you feeling physically? How are you doing? Understanding that is very important as a next step, a step number 3. And probably this comes even sooner. But for me, I think it was like more of the third step. Like, okay, what do I actually need to do this? So paying attention to your body, paying attention to the ways that you can maybe tap into mentors, therapists, spiritual guides. There's a lot within our networks that, you can probably have access to. If you're able to maintain your health insurance for a little bit, making sure that you're taking care of yourself is a very important step. Step number 4 is, I would say, looking at what you want to do. For me, I had this calling to create. But I always felt like I wasn't a creative person, because sometimes we're told a creative person is someone who knows how to paint beautiful portraits, or someone who knows how to design a beautiful home, or someone who, I don't know, what do you think a creative person is? And so I had to kind of go inward and say, I have this calling to create, but I don't feel creative. But I want to kind of prove to myself that I can create. And to the point that I named my podcast the Mujeres Create podcast. And, I am pushing boundaries to write. I'm writing a TV series, which I'm hoping comes to fruition. I am also building this business on wellness and leadership coaching and team building, and bringing people back to their center in the corporate environment specifically. And so I'm really pushing the boundaries. I am trying to design a beautiful home myself, and always thinking, how can I make this space better? And again, like, I combat feelings of I'm not creative. I don't have that creative eye. And so every day I think about how can I just be a little bit more creative with my life. And with that, lesson number 4 is, or advice number 4 is, what do you want to create? What do you want to pivot into? And really taking time to think through that, because the reinvention part of it is you are inventing something new. I think when we take the time to brainstorm, when I came up with my podcast, I was at times I felt like I needed to just come up with a name and a concept. And I'm like, oh my God, now it's May, now it's April, now it's May, now it's June. I can't come up with this. Like, why? It didn't feel right. And then I'm like, I need to just take my time and it'll come to me. And it did. I went on a walk one day, and in my meditation, in my walking meditation, I came up with the name of it and the concept for it. And then I came home and I was like, that's it. That's the concept. But, after pressuring myself, then surrendering, I came up with it. Same thing with the business that I'm creating, the leadership coaching. I've been really feeling pressure to do something to put the work out there, but I've decided this is not the time to rush through it. Let me just take my time. Obviously, if you're giving yourself 6 months or a year of sabbatical time, or like figuring things out, your savings are just really going to take you through the next year. Maybe there's a little bit of pressure there, right? But the more that you can take time to really map things out, to really get into your creativity, into your flow, the better the things you're going to create. So give yourself that time, that space. And if you can't come up with creativity when you're home because maybe it's too busy, too many people, or maybe, I don't know, like you feel blocked, go to a coffee shop and work from there. Maybe if you can, go on vacation and like just see different people, immerse yourself in a different environment, attend an event, go to a workshop, sign up for a class. There's so many different ways that we can boost our creativity. And I want to encourage you to always think there's definitely many ways that we can all tap into our creativity. The last but not least, and probably there's more steps, but I'm keeping it to 5, right? Because then we'll be here all day. I think the last one, and this is a very important one, resisting the urge to compare yourself to others. Because remember, you're deconstructing your identity. You are pivoting into something new. You are trying things for the first time. You are maybe not making a lot of money or any money. You are trial and error mode. You're trying things, they don't work out, you try something else. In all this time, you're on social media, looking at your colleagues, they're still thriving, they're still moving ahead, they're still enjoying themselves, enjoying their careers, and you're home like, what did I do? Is this going to work? How do I just, I don't know, make money? There's a lot of self doubt. And with self doubt comes comparisons. And should I be further? Did I make a mistake? Should I go back? Resist that urge to compare yourself, because remember, everybody is going through something. We only get to see part of the story on social media. Most people are posting about their happy times, and I understand. They're not posting about their failures or mistakes, and you're living it and breathing it in the moment when you're trying to reinvent yourself, when you're trying to deconstruct your identity. So try not to feel like you need to compare yourself to anyone. And I'm on that journey every single day. And, it's a process that never ends. No matter how far you go or how little you do, it's something that's constantly there. But when we're able to manage that and really stay away from internalizing, what other people are doing, and just focus on what we're doing, staying present in who we are and what we want, believing in ourselves. And that should be another lesson, like believing in yourself. Just understand that this is your path. This is your journey that you're carving out, that you're designing, that you're creating for yourself. You are redefining what success means to you. So none of the old things that you've been doing are going to get you there. This is a new territory that you're charting for yourself. So give yourself a lot of grace, a lot of love, find ways to support yourself, and believe that if you are taking a leap, if you're supporting yourself in the right ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, things are going to pan out for you in amazing ways, probably better than you ever imagined. And I want everyone who is seeking something new, something different, to feel that they're worthy of those things. They may not know what those things are or where they are, but you're worthy of them. Go after them. Thank you so much for tuning in to this series. It's really been a trip down memory lane for me. From the first episode where I talked about my first job in media, to the time I moved to Chicago for NBCU, to when I learned how to negotiate my salary, my compensation, to the time I got rejected by Yahoo and I landed at Hulu, to my burnout at Google, to exiting corporate at iHeartMedia. It's been a beautiful journey. And I am so grateful for this career path. I am so grateful for all the opportunities. I'm so grateful for every single person who saw potential in me, who hired me for their teams, who gave me an opportunity to create this amazing career path. Every company that created a space for me to work there, it hasn't been easy. And I talk about all of those things I experienced, but above it all, I am so full of love and gratitude for all of those years that I spent, because even in the hard times, there were a lot of fun times, a lot of amazing people that I met along the way, a lot of mentors that helped me push me to the finish line, a lot of victories, a lot of wins, a lot of joy, a lot of friendships, a lot of connections, a lot of learning, a lot of experiences, a lot of travel. It truly, it truly has been unimaginable. And when I think about, I came to the United States when I was 11 years old, and I came to the United States when I was 11 years old, and I was placed in this English speaking class because the school that I went to, PS 117, didn't offer bilingual classes. So my sister and I, she was in the fifth grade, I was in the sixth grade. We were both placed in English speaking classes. And I was placed in this classroom. And, the teacher, God bless her heart, she didn't want to be dealing with a student that didn't speak the language. It just meant more work for her. So she would put me in the back of the class, and I would not understand a single word. Like, obviously, as the year went along, I would understand different words: hello, goodbye, welcome. And I would try to sometimes participate, but I didn't even know what I was doing. But she would place me in the back of the class, and I would just be coloring books all day. Every single day, I was just coloring books and I was not participating. I was just kind of like ignored in class. And, you know, that's something that really stayed with me for a long time because um, I felt like I had nothing to contribute in that class, like I was a problem, like I was an inconvenience. Some of the kids were kind to me. Most of the kids were making fun of me and made me feel like I shouldn't be there, like I didn't belong there. And as a child, you don't know that all of these things are going to have an impact on you. Um, that really was a blessing in disguise for me because I was pushed um, so far out of my comfort zone that I basically was thrown in to learn English as fast as I could. And by the time I got to seventh grade and eighth grade and ninth grade, I was able to communicate and I was able to learn English probably faster than, the kids that are placed in bilingual education, because when you're forced in this way to just learn a new language, I think that's your advantage. Like, you have no choice. You have to communicate in some way, shape, or form. So you find the words, you find the way, right? So by the time I got to seventh, eighth, and ninth grade, I felt like I was in a better place, and then I was fine. But that experience really shaped me into someone who doesn't like to see anyone be left behind, or anyone get bullied, or anyone be made fun of, or someone be ignored, unheard, not celebrated. Like, I think in many ways, that experience is really what, pushed my path towards a career in multicultural marketing, and then later into a career into DE&I in a crazy way. But I think that experience really pushed me to this path. And I think about, like, I did this podcast recently, the Humble Rising podcast with Aribe, and she asked me, what would you tell your 10-year-old self? And it brought me right to that. At 10 years old, I was in Dominican Republic, probably working on my US status, getting ready to move to the United States with my dad and my sister. And I was so worried about the language, the place where I was going to live. I was going to obviously be away from my mother, and now living in a different place in New York City, of all places. And I said to her, I would just tell that 10-year-old self that she's going to figure it out little by little. And I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful to have had that experience, because I know a lot of kids have those experiences, especially in this political climate that we're unfortunately in. And some kids, at 10, 11 years old, you really don't know how your life is going to be. And sometimes you underestimate yourself, and sometimes you believe the narrative that other people tell you. And sometimes kids just figure it out. They have this light, this power that pushes them through. And I feel like that's what happened with me. And I'm just so grateful to have had this incredible career for 22 years, where I got to work for amazing media companies. I got to climb the corporate ladder. I got recruited several times. I got to work in places that a lot of people want to work at. I got to do really fun, cool things. I got to work in a career that not many people know how fun it is and how amazing and how many opportunities there are. And I got to really grow into myself in so many ways. Even though I'm now trying to reinvent myself, that previous version of me is so special to me and is always going to be part of me. So I just wanted to end this series with that beautiful sentiment because my career has been very special and I'm very grateful, and I've done things that I never thought I could, and if I had to do it all over again I would, and if I ever had to go back to it I would. But now it's time but now it's time for me to do different things, and I don't have all the answers, but I'm having fun figuring it out. And wherever you are in your journey, I am here to support you and I'm rooting for you. And we got this. Thank you for tuning in. It's been fun. I hope you enjoyed and pass these episodes along. Share the wisdom, share the knowledge, share the lessons, because a lot of us are going through the same things. So don't keep it close to your chest. Make sure that you're sharing. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Mujeres Create podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and don't forget to share the wisdom with other mujeres.